Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here and welcome back to the workbench for another unboxing. This week it is the Supermarine Spitfire Mk.1a in 1/48 scale from Airfix. So join me as I take a look inside the box and see what we've got. On the front then, we've got this artwork which is absolutely beautiful and it depicts the aircraft during the height of the Battle of Britain. Down here on the left hand side there are two different images of the Spitfire which indicate that there are two different paint schemes. This looks to be a later version and a more early version down the bottom. A item code of A05126A is also present down the bottom. On the back, there's nothing other than a little bit of an identification code on there. And also, we'll flip over to the thin edges. So the thin edges then, safety information in multiple languages. We've got a copyright information here, design and tooling from 2015, and decal scheme and pack design from 2020. So it's not one of the most recent kits in the range, but it's not that old either. Contact information for Hornby Hobbies, and also we've got some information about BAE Systems and a Cartograph logo which will tell us that the decals inside are printed by Cartograph. The other thin edge then, we have some information about the actual Spitfire along with dimensions of the model. So the model will be 192mm in length, 232 wide, and it contains 149 pieces. Naturally, not all of them may be used to build the version that you want. Then we've got our two paint schemes, and the first one is a Mk.1a, which was used by 222 Squadron at RAF Hornchurch in August 1940. However, the earlier version is a Spitfire Mk.1, not the A version, of 611 Squadron in Duxford in autumn of 1939. Moving on to the right hand side, we've got some paints which are recommended from the Humbrol range. Naturally, other brands do exist. We have two flying hours, so cut out and keep those. If you're a member of the club, you can use those flying hours to redeem against more kits. However, do save them, because if you're not a member of the club, you can post them to various charities, Models for Heroes being one, which will use them for their charity work. Skill level 2, so Airfix indicate to us that this won't be a particularly hard model to build. And then the thin edges on the end just feature the same information that we've already covered. So let's get the box open and take a look inside. And we have a A4 booklet which has been folded down the middle, which makes it a little bit difficult to stay in place. This side has the information regarding the actual Spitfire, and then we have some tips about cleaning the surfaces down the bottom there before we begin. Then we have some more information about assembly and the icons that we're going to encounter during the build. On the right hand side then we start our assembly, and it looks like it has a cockpit assembly similar to other 1/48 scale kits that I've looked at in the past. So there are sidewalls which come as separate pieces, and we install various components into them. All of the colour callouts are on here as well, which are numbered. We assemble our chair, and there are two different chairs depending on which version you're doing. I'm guessing A, that's the war version, so we have armour plating, whereas the one without is for the earlier version. And again, we've got some armour plating to go onto our bulkhead frame here. Add our chairs, and if we're not including our pilot, we can put our rudder pedals in. So I'm guessing there's a pilot included. If we are including, then don't put them in there because he will get in the way and he won't fit. Moving on, we've got our control panel, which there is a transfer for. We finish up the bathtub of our cockpit, and then we can add our pilot. So yes, there is a pilot included if you want to use him. If you want the canopy closed, you need to remove a little bit of plastic here, and then we add our cockpit, some small details, and then close up the fuselage. You can display a door open on the side, which is quite a nice addition, but it does involve cutting away a bit of the fuselage. Now we come on to the wing part and we've got some notes. We can open up our gun bays if we want to. What absolute extra added value that is. We can open up our gun bays and have, I presume there's going to be gun parts. We'll have a look at that in a minute. If you don't want to do that, you can just skip that. And then we move on to our gear wells, and there's various parts that need to be added into there. Again, color callouts are all on there. We have our internal gun bay parts here then, and yes, there are machine guns included, at least the breeches are included, and what looks to be the feeders with the ammunition in them. So that is a great addition. And I've looked at larger scale models from other companies who charge a bit more and they don't have that sort of extra value. We join our wings and then we progress on with our various surfaces. So the tail, the rudder, the ailerons. We have our bottom of our nose. Air intakes are added and you can have them in an open or closed position. Then we have our landing gear, and the landing gear has the option of being raised or lowered, which is fantastic. Make sure you pay attention to which pitot tube you need as well. Then we move on to adding our exhausts. The propeller assembly can be done at this stage, so I imagine you could leave that off if you wanted to and put that in after you've done painting. Now we come on to canopy. So there's different canopy options in the sense that you can have your canopy open or closed on this model kit. So here, for example, down the bottom, we've got our little door open and a canopy open, or we've got the door closed and the canopy closed. So yeah, that's very nice. I love the fact that they've included those choices. Over here, we have our lower access to the guns. We have a little door added for that, so you can have them open. And they've even included the bits of the plating which went over the gun access areas, so you can just position them on the model as if the aircraft is being worked on. Then we have two different aerial masts as well. So they've thought about quite a lot with this kit. Painting instructions then. We have our first one here from 1940, and there are some notes on here telling us to apply the wing walk decals before the roundel because you want them to go underneath. Paint colours are all in Humbrol, but naturally, as mentioned, you can use alternative brands, and it doesn't look to be overly complicated. Typical sky colour, dark earth, dark brown, black spinner, and there don't seem to be that many transfers to apply, which is quite good if you want to make quick progress. And then the last one is the earlier Mk.1 version, slightly more complicated paint scheme. So the upper side is pretty much the same. However, there is a note saying that there was a repaired panel, so the paints on there potentially were different colour. They may have been slightly different. And on the underside, we have silver and then black and white, which was for identification. However, there is a mention here about the serial number of FYQ and whether it was overpainted at the maintenance unit. So yeah, they've put a lot of information onto this kit to help the modeler. So let's take a look at the transfers then. And we have one beautiful sheet of transfers from Cartograph, which is an Italian company. And these sometimes cost as much as the plastic parts that go into the kit. So yeah, they're top-notch quality. Printing is absolutely spot on. We've got some for our control panel, trestles, gun ports, walkway lines. The little stencils are all legible. You can see it says like not to be walked on that one. That's really nice, isn't it? And then we've got our roundels. So the top one here is for the slightly later version, and the registry on that is really good. They don't seem to be too thick, there's no tears. And then moving on down, we've got the one for the earlier version, which is quite attractive. I love the slightly different roundels on there. And it's also got the detector paper square as well. Yep, very nice looking decals. So then, let's move on to the plastic parts and get those out of their bag. Clear parts, they look really nice. They look crystal clear. I can't see any excess flash. We have a number of different canopy options. So I presume we have open and closed, and the closed one, there are 3 of them. Not entirely sure what the differences are between the 3 of them. I thought one of them would be the very early single-bladed propeller version, but they don't seem to be flat enough for that. So there are a number of different choices there. Perhaps this is a generic sprue, which are included in the other kits like the Mark 5 and things. Because if you look over here, this looks like wing tip parts for a clipped wing Spitfire. So I wonder if this is a generic sprue which is included in the Mark 5 version as well. Which I actually have a Mark 5 version, and I'll have a look at that one at some point in the future and we'll compare. But yeah, they look to be very nice. Moulding is good, no flash. Moulded details are raised and should be fairly easy to follow when you come to mask them, if you're going to mask them. But yeah, very nice. They do feel a little bit smooth, possibly a little bit greasy, so definitely worth a wash and maybe a primer when you come to do your painting part. So yeah, clear parts, very nice. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 grey or light grey plastic sprues. So let's just have a look at the first one that we pulled off there. So we have our fuselage halves, and again a little bit smooth, maybe a little bit greasy, just a touch. Would need probably a wash, definitely maybe a primer just to help the paint stick. The details on here are of the recessed variety, and there are some little rivet details around the nose as well, and they look really nice. The panel lines are not the trenches that you have on the Mk.1 in 1/72 scale. I've got one of those here somewhere. So this is in slightly different colours, but you can see on here we've got panel lines which are like trenches, but this version doesn't feature that. So yeah, very nice indeed. Let's flip over onto the other side, and we have got some interior detail as well. We have ejector pin marks, which might need some cleaning up, but generally not too bad. Let's move on then to the next part. We have our wings. So again, as on the fuselage, we have recessed and raised as appropriate. Some hints of rivets on there, not overly riveted, which I guess leads a modeler to add those details if they so wish. There is a little bit of dirt on there. When the plastic comes out of the mould, it is static, so any dirt in the air will be automatically attracted to it. A tiny little bit of flash around the edge there, which will need cleaning up. If you can see that there, just there, tiny little bit of flash. And then if we flip over, we have our internal details as well. So this is where they've factored in for our gun parts if we want to include them. And I'm really tempted to do this on the ground with, guns out for display. I know it comes with a pilot, and I'd like to have it flying because the pilot's included, but having these extras makes me really want to put the guns on display. So let's move on to the next sprue. And speaking of pilot, there he is. This is our generic 1/48 scale pilot by the looks of it. He's been featured in a number of other kits. I think my P40 had the same one, and my Spitfire 14 had the same guy as well. So pretty generic. Details are pretty good, pretty crisp. Nothing really in the way of flash. A little bit of dirt on the moulding there, but nothing that can't be painted over. Details are pretty good, and no short shots that I can see initially. Moving on to the other side, and it's the same sort of deal. Generally looks to be a very nicely moulded model. Even the wheels here, they've got some flat sides to where they would be under pressure when on the ground with the weight of the aircraft going through them. Progressing on then, we have another propeller, so that makes 2. So there's one there, and even a 2-bladed early propeller, which is pretty cool. I I'm a little bit disappointed actually, because this doesn't represent an early two-bladed propeller, does it? It represents a slightly later three-bladed propeller. Oh yeah, if I wanted to do that, I'd have to add in some extra decals, I think, from another manufacturer to display it like that. I think Airfix have in the past done a very early version with just the two-bladed propeller, but this is not that version. This is a three-bladed propeller kit. But yeah, so we've got our side of our cockpit. We've got two different choices here for our nose. So it looks like one which had the armour, one that didn't. And then our gun barrels here as well. They're quite nicely moulded. Fairly good detail on there. Not barrels, sorry, breeches. The bits where the bullets go in. And yeah, there's the panels that go on to the gun bays when they're not closed. Small details are quite nicely represented. And then the final sprue. So tail surfaces, bulkhead stuff, tail wheel, option of aerials, flipping over. Yep, internal cockpit details again, pretty good. So we had a different tub side on that one, didn't we? So again, I think there might be some generic parts for slightly different versions. It looks very similar to that one, but it has different pipework on it. Yeah. They've added a lot of value essentially into this kit. The little door there for displaying it open if you want to. Yeah, you could do a lot with this. So let's wrap this one up. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 very nicely moulded grey sprues with a lot of detail parts on there. Details on there, not necessarily as fine as other companies, but still very nice indeed. Plastic may benefit from a wash and a primer though, just to remove any grease. We had one absolutely beautiful set of clear parts with naturally extra parts for other variants, which are not included in this kit sadly, but nonetheless they're on there. Some Cartograph decals, which look to be amazing. As mentioned, Cartograph makes some absolutely fantastic transfers, and it would be a shame to not use them because they are absolutely brilliant. Instruction booklet where all the paint colours are called out for you, and also it gives you different options, and there are even some research notes in there, so just make sure you read them and have a look. And all of that comes contained inside a box with this absolutely stunning artwork on the front. So let's talk a little bit about the history of this kit, and it would seem that I was pretty much spot on with the fact that this does represent a Mark V in another boxing of it. So in 2014 a Spitfire Mark V was introduced, and then in 2015 the parts for the Mk.1 were included effectively. So this is a 2014-2015 version of the kit. This version coming from 2015 parts wise, but as mentioned, the actual transfers that we have in here, this version is a 2020 boxing. It has been released a few different times as the Mark V. I do have, as mentioned, the Dogfight Doubles version, which comes with a 109 as well. So at some point in the future we'll have a look inside of here and see potentially maybe how much it compares to the Mk.1 if I haven't already built that one. I'm pretty sure though when this was first released in 2015 it did make use of a paint scheme which needed that double two-bladed propeller rather than the three, which is probably the version I would have liked to have gone for, but it wasn't in the shops at the time. So speaking of in the shops, at the moment this is still available when I'm making this video on the Airfix website, and it's retailing for £28.99. Naturally I think prices have risen a little bit. If you could get it slightly cheaper then, you know, that's fantastic, but £28.99, so let's call it £29, that doesn't seem to be a particularly bad price for this kit. Bearing in mind, yeah, it's 148, so it's a little bit bigger than kits that I normally work with. I normally work with 1/72 scale. And when you work with 1/72 scale, you're not used to paying that little bit extra, but the fact that we've got 149 pieces and the option to have the landing gear raised or lowered, and the option to have the canopy open or closed, and a pilot, and the option to have your gun bays open with the relevant parts or representation thereof molded inside there, and that little door which goes on the side of the cockpit which you can have open as well. Like, there is a lot of extra value in this kit. So £28.99, that's pretty good because it gives you a lot of choice. Not to mention it does come with 2 paint schemes as well. Naturally, you can only build one. I would be tempted to go for the earlier version with the black and white undersides. It would look something like this. Slightly different though, because this is an old Hasegawa kit which I built recently. See, it's got the 2-bladed prop, which is quite nice, but it would look something similar to this, but with silver on the upper and lower parts there. Potentially not have the alternating black and white. But yeah, let me know down in the comments which version you would do, and also whether my assessment of this kit was fair. As always, a quick shout out to my channel members and my patrons for the extra support they give the channel. A massive thank you to these guys on screen. To find out how to join them, take a look at the links in the description. There are also other ways to help support the channel, and again, full details are in the description. Alternatively, if you'd like to support me for free, subscribing with notifications on will mean you never miss a morning upload. Finally, the last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.